Welcome to the San Gorgonio Chapter Trail Talk series. My name is John St. Clair, and I'm your Zoom host for tonight. I'm also a member of the Trail Talk Committee. And before we get started with our program tonight, which is about Mono Lake, I want to go over ground rules. First of all, we would like everybody to be muted except for the speaker. And if you have a question during the talk, we would like you to put it in the chat section. If you look at the bottom of your screen, you should see a talking bubble icon with the word chat. If you click on it, you can send it to everyone, which is the default, and just, jot down your question there so you don't forget it, and we will make sure that all questions get answered before the evening is over. So that's how we'll handle that. When the talk is completely done, at that point, you can unmute yourself if you want to talk directly to the speaker or ask questions about the talk or anything else Sierra Club. Trail Talk was started during COVID when we were not allowed to hike. Sierra Clubs shut down all of our outings, and we wanted to keep the interest up, so we started having this monthly series. Of course, now outings are back up and running, so take a look at the San Gorgonio chapter outings and events, and you'll find lots of interesting things to do, hikes of various skills and length and endurance required, from easy to doing peak bagging in the summer. So be sure to take a look at that. And what I'm going to do, if you registered for this talk before 5, I sent out a reminder email, and in that email, I put the link to the San Gorgonio Chapter YouTube channel, and this is being recorded right now. And maybe tonight or tomorrow morning, I will post it on the YouTube channel. So if you get interrupted and don't get to hear the whole talk, or if you really like the talk and you want to suggest to a friend that they listen to it, you can send them the YouTube link and they can watch it tomorrow or whenever at their convenience. Now, at this point, I'd like to introduce Julianne Anderson, who also is a member of the Trail Talk Committee and also is co-chair of the San Gorgonio Chapter Outings program. And Julianne always does the introductions because she does such a wonderful job, and I will let her introduce our speaker.
You are very kind and sweet, John. Thank you. Before I introduce our delightful speaker, Ann Ruiz, this evening, I do want to put in a plug and continue what John has said about our outings program. There are 11 of us here tonight, so a wonderful seminar group. Please look at the total list of our outings. We have a wide range of outings. Going from our Mount Rubidoux fitness walk twice a month in Riverside to, as John is saying, up Icehouse Canyon starting soon in the San Gabriels, to desert hikes such as our Chuckwalla hike coming up Sunday. So we have a broad range of things coming up. We have camping trips, car camping trips, and backpacking trips starting in April, May, and going throughout the summer. Our leadership training course for outings leaders begins on April 12th, if you're interested in that, or you know someone who is. And that will be on April 12th at the San Bernardino Museum, and on May 3rd and 4th up at our cabin at Keller ski hut. So we have a lot going on. A couple of things that I also want to let you know about. The Trump administration has threatened to delist the Chuckwalla National Monument as a monument. As you may know, President Biden, right before he left office in January, declared both Chuckwalla here in the eastern Coachella Valley, south of Joshua Tree, and just northeast of Mecca, a beautiful national monument under the Antiquities Act. He also declared the Satitla national monument in Northern California. Trump administration is threatening to delist both of these and open it up to extraction, to mining, to water mining, and other offenses. There will be a protest this Saturday because we've had this kind of on again, off again. They threatened to delist it Saturday, then they scrubbed that from the listing that the White House puts out of activity. Then they did the same thing again yesterday. They threatened to delist it, and they scrubbed it from their list. So I think it's coming down the pike. The Resistance Rangers, these are the fired rangers from the national parks, including Joshua Tree and others, including Sierra Club, are organizing a protest. It's this Saturday, the 22nd, from 10 to 2 in downtown Palm Springs. Specifically, it's at the downtown park at Museum Way and Bellardo. I will be there. Moises Cisneros, who is our national staffer, who worked for years to put together the coalition that helped us to get the national monument, he will be there. The Resistance Rangers will be there. Mary Lunetta, who's another national official for the Sierra Club, will be there. So important that we show up. So spread the word. It's this Saturday, 10 a.m. to 2 p.m., downtown park in Palm Springs. Bring water. It's going to be a warm weekend. It's supposed to be in the 80s. They're high 80s. So wear a hat. Come and be ready to make yourself heard, because this is a very, very heartbreaking and difficult thing. That's it. And there will be the next day, we're actually going out to Chuckwalla. I and Moises are leading a hike we used to call it the Mecca Hills, but it's the beautiful Painted Canyon in the new national monument. Go to our outings list and check it out. We just had a couple of slots open up. It's at capacity, but I know a couple of people who are not going. We're meeting at the Starbucks on I-10 in Banning at 22nd Street at 7 a.m. on Sunday morning, Sunday. We're caravanning out to the site, which is basically out the 10, exit 145 in Indio, and then go to 66th Street to Painted Canyon, and then up to the canyon. So it's relatively easy. So with that said, I'd like to introduce our speaker, Mary Ann Ruiz, our leader of this chapter. She is our chapter chair and a longtime outings leader. Joined the Sierra Club because she wanted to hike, and has been leading hikes, going on raft trips, and then getting into Sierra Club conservation, Sierra Club administration for a long time now. And she has led our chapter. She has been involved in Sierra Club California as a member of their executive board, and the chair, has been the chair of Sierra Club California, and is now running for the national board. So we are very lucky indeed to have Mary Ann as our chapter chair. And Carla Kellums and I and Summer Davidson are on the leadership team along with Mary Ann here in the chapter. So it is a delight to have her train us and set the example that she has of, strong leadership and organized leadership. And we're eager to hear about Mono Lake and her annual trip there to see the bird Chautauqua, among other things. So with that, Mary Ann, I'm going to toss it over to you.
All right. Thank you, Julianne. And wow, very nice introduction. And yeah, I did just want to go for a hike, but here I am. I joined Sierra Club because I wanted to find people to hike with, and got very involved over the last almost 25 years. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and talk about one of my favorite places, which is the Mono Basin, the entire area of Mono Basin, including Mono Lake and the surrounding Sierra high country. So this is just my beginning slide. So we'll go to the next one. And this is just a beautiful area. I just love it up here. I've been going to the Sierras since I was a little kid, always going to Yosemite for years. And then started as I got older, I got into visiting more places on my own, visiting the eastern side of the Sierras. Really got into the Mono Lake area when my brother, for a part-time summer job, after being retired for many years, he decided to take summers up at Mono Lake as one of the rangers in the visitor center. Actually, at the where we'll see a little kiosk at South Tufa that he was a ranger there in the summers for a few years. But that said, I just love the area, and I got more into it at that time. So we're kind of going to go through a few things tonight, kind of little history, natural stuff about Mono Lake and how saving Mono Lake is started. Then we're going to go on a visiting the whole area. I'm going to show you a lot of different places to visit, and then we'll get into the actual, how do we save Mono Lake? What's it? What do we need to save it from? All that sort of thing. So we'll get started here. So one second here while I move the little Zoom screens around so I can see what I want to talk about. Make it guys smaller. There we go. Okay. So Mono Lake, put you over there, is an ancient saline lake at the edge of the Great Basin, kind of, at the beginning edge of the Great Basin with Sierra Nevada mountains on the left. It covers 70 square miles and supports a unique and highly productive ecosystem. Mono Lake has no fish, but is teeming with trillions, and that's the word, trillions of brine shrimp and alkali flies, which sustain millions of migratory birds that visit the lake every year. Freshwater streams feed Mono Lake, and they support lush riparian forests of cottonwood and willows along the banks feeding into the lake. Along the lake shore, you'll find scenic limestone formations called tufa towers that rise from the water's surface. Mono Lake and its surrounding basin encompass one of California's richest natural areas. These are just some of the wildlife at Mono Lake. You'll see the picture on the left of the tufa towers. At the top of one of those towers is a osprey up on a nest. It's kind of hard to see. It was a long distance, but that's an osprey nest up there, and there are usually at least a couple osprey nests. On the right, you'll see one of the tiny, tiny brine shrimp that live in the waters of the lake. On the lower right are more birds. There's some gulls, phalaropes, and eared grebes in this photo, but there's just, millions of birds visit the lake every year. And on the left is one of the Wilson's phalaropes that comes up in the summer from similar saline lakes in Argentina, Peru, and that part of South America. They fly up all the way every year, thousands of them, although their numbers are getting lower, as with most birds. Here's another picture of some of the gulls. It's a huge nesting place on one of the islands in the lake for California gulls. We're going to watch just a short little video here for about 4 minutes about the basic piece of the ecology here at the lake, which is the alkali fly. They're very interesting little critters that are basic to the survival of the migrating birds that come to the lake every year. So bear with me here a second. We'll get this started.
This fly is the Jacques Cousteau of flies. It dives where no other insect dares. in its very own scuba gear. It risks it all for food and a place to lay its eggs. The alkali fly thrives in waters 3 times saltier than the ocean, here in California's Mono Lake. It lives among these otherworldly towers of limestone deposits called tufas. Those same minerals make the water inhospitable for almost every other form of life. Like if someone made a soup of table salt, baking soda, and soda ash, an abrasive stain remover. But the alkali fly, it loves it. Scientists call this kind of creature an extremophile. It survives in an extreme environment. As a larva, it spends all its time underwater. It gets oxygen through its skin. These special kidneys, called lime glands, pump excess salts out of its body. It's a process called osmoregulation. When it grows up, it gets its wings. But it loses those lime glands and can't breathe under the surface. So this extremophile employs an extreme solution. A shimmering bubble shield enclosing its entire body.
think we lost a little bit of our audio,
Yeah, most of it.
but still many questions about these amazing flies, which, as I recall, Marianne, are everywhere, all over the shorelines of Mona Lake.
Marianne's muted.
I'm coming back. We lost some of our folks, huh? Okay, that's too bad.
Well, we lost the audio on the video about halfway through.
Oh dear.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Huh.
It was fine for a while, and then all of a sudden it became silent, and all we had was video.
Oh, that's too bad.
Yeah.
Okay, now it shows 13 participants. Okay.
We learned a lot though.
Okay, well,
Yeah, several questions about it.
okay. What did
Maybe
you
this
have?
is a good time to take them.
Sure.
I from the times I've been to Mona Lake, I mean, these flies literally are everywhere, and I've heard that not only are they food source to birds, but they were the protein source as a protein meal, I think, for the Native American tribes. Can you describe that? I mean, this is like the protein basis for the area, as I recall.
Yeah, that's yes. The tribe did collect the local tribe, and there's more information about that on the Mono Lake Committee website about the tribe that used these for food. Um, it was a real high source of protein,
Yeah.
and they could just scoop them up. You can walk as you walk along the shoreline there. They're just like that one spot in the video towards the end there where you could see them flying, hundreds of them flying up. They're just everywhere. But they were a big source of protein there. The, when they're on the shore like that, the birds will just walk along with their bills open, scooping them up.
Hmm.
And then the phalaropes, they spin around in the water and create a vortex that bring the flies to the surface so they can eat them.
Oh,
So they're at the base of that food because there are no fish in the lake.
right.
But yes, they were a protein source for the native tribe there.
What about the
Well,
shrimp?
The shrimp are also, yes, they're definitely a food source for the birds. And
well,
then,
and I always think, when I'm in a place, and the Great Basin is I wouldn't call it desolate, but it's a very unique ecosystem. And
mhm,
I always think, how would I survive if I was living out here?
mhm,
Um, and you can see how the flies are like a easy source of protein. I mean, you just scoop them up. I mean, easier than the brine shrimp, probably easier than hunting birds, even though the birds are there by the thousands.
mhm.
But what an easy way to get protein. So huge for the entire ecosystem.
Yes, it's very much the base of the ecosystem. Other than if you go one step below, the algae in the lake feeds the larvae for the flies, and it- the brine shrimp are another food source that they estimate that there's somewhere between 4 and 12 trillion brine shrimp during the warm summer months, and that they do also provide food for the millions of migratory birds. And the gulls that we saw in the previous slide, they estimate that there's around it's the largest California gull rookery, and there are about 50,000 gulls nesting on the lake in the summer.
Before you move on, and I know you're going to cover this, but two things. I know that it's under the Pacific Flyway, so that explains like
Mhm.
why a lot of the migratory birds are there. But why do so many California seagulls come inland to the Great Basin, to Mona Lake, to breed and nest? I mean, that seems so funny, so far away from the sea.
That's a good question, and I don't have an answer for you on that one. And I would guess that I could make a guess that um, I don't even have a guess. It's a safe place because they can get into when the lake levels were higher, it was a safer place because they would fly to the islands on the lake and not have any predators around other than possibly eagles and flying birds. But there were so many of them they could be safe on the islands as the lake level dropped. At one point, there was a land bridge to the island that was their main rookery, or one of their main rookeries, and that was one of the reasons that one of the problems with the lake levels being lower than they are now. But I don't have that's just a guess. I have no idea.
They
If
just
you know, go ahead.
they like the safety, which makes total sense.
Yeah.
And a couple other questions. Can you that are from the chat? Uh,
Okay.
can you talk about how the lowered lake levels, and I know you're going to discuss that in a minute.
Mhm.
How has that impacted the flies? And how is this lake like the Great Salt Lake as a Great Basin saline lake?
So, well, first the flies and the brine shrimp would both be affected by the lowering um, lake levels because as the water as there's less water, it becomes the salinity becomes much higher, and these animals like the brine shrimp and the flies, they can take a lot, but at some point they can't take it anymore and they're going to die. So that's the huge problem with the lake being diverted and the lake level getting lower and lower. So um, it's the salinity level gets higher as the water gets lower. So that's the main problem for these animals that feed these little creatures that feed so many animals up the food chain. And then as far as remind me your second question.
How talk about a little bit how this is kind of like the Great Salt Lake as
Oh
this
yeah, okay, the
Great
Great
Basin.
Basin. Well, the whole Great Basin, it's called the Great Basin because the water doesn't flow out of it. Water ends up in these lakes that don't have an outlet. They only have an inlets, and they're on big flat playas, so they're not very deep, and they evaporate. And as they evaporate, they become more and more. The salinity grows from just from the environment around, and things don't survive. Fish can't survive in these highly saline lakes, but these little creatures adapt. So it's similar to this Great Salt Lake. You'll see lakes up in Eastern Oregon that are similar in the Great Basin, and all. Yeah, it's just a matter of the um, geology of the area is that the Great Basin water doesn't flow out of it. It doesn't flow into the Pacific Ocean, doesn't flow into the um, Mississippi or the Gulf of Mexico. It just stays there and dries up because of um, the weather there. Okay. All right. I'll move on here. So tufa. Um, it's really interesting. It's very fragile. It's very interesting geology, but these formed underwater. It forms around underwater springs, um, and beneath the lake there are freshwater springs that are rich in calcium, and the fresh water seeps up from the lake bottom and mixes with the lake water that's rich in carbonates, baking soda basically. So think about, and as the calcium comes in contact with the carbonates, it results in calcium carbonate or basically limestone. So the limestone precipitates out of this water as a solid around the edges of around the springs, and then over decades or centuries, a tower will grow. So tufa towers can grow to heights of more than 40 feet underwater. I'm sorry, 30 feet underwater. So you might wonder why these tufa towers are no longer underwater. And we'll go on to our next slide there about LA Department of Water and Power and Mono Lake. So in 1941, LADWP began stream diversions from the tributaries feeding Mono Lake. Um, as with other Great Basin lakes, Lake hasn't any outlet, but it has inlets from various freshwater streams. And in over history, the level would rise and fall annually based on the snowpack and the rainfall. It would dry, evaporate and then refill and evaporate and refill. But in 1941, stream diversions began and created a potential disaster for the lake. The Before diversions, the lake was at 6,470 feet, 17 feet elevation. And at the very lowest, it was at 6,372 feet. And that was in, I believe, 1964. Maybe, I'm not sure. I have that written down somewhere. Anyway, we're going to return to that a little bit later. It was saved, thanks to a successful citizen advocacy and a set of rules that were won from the state river board. Little Lake was basically saved from destruction. The lake is supposed to be raised to a mandated management level of 6,392 feet based on that decision. That's the elevation above sea level. And that's critical level for the health of the lake and the entire ecosystem. And that is the most important metric for measuring and restoring the lake is that elevation above sea level. But it's not rising on schedule as planned, and we're going to get to that later after we kind of visit the area around Mono Lake. So to get there, you travel to the little town of Lee Vining. It's about 340 miles from from where I am in the Inland Empire in Chino. That's a good 6 hours of just drive time, not counting breaks and stops. And when I drive up there, I often want to spend a night or two somewhere on the way to visit all the wonderful places along Highway 395, which is a different program than what we're doing tonight. It is a great place to visit. It's a long drive, but it's a beautiful drive. My favorite drive. When you get to Lee Vining, the first place you probably would want to go would be to the Mono Basin Scenic Area Visitor Center. This is run by the Forest Service and a lot of volunteer help. And that's your place for information, maps, help, suggestions on where to go, what to do, what to see, depending on how much time you have there. They can give you a good idea of what's your best use of your time. And then back in town, you would want to go to the Mono Lake Committee's bookstore and headquarters. They have a great bookstore there with lots of Mono Lake items to look at, lots of books, and can tell you more about the situation at the lake. In town, there are some places that you can, it's not a huge town, but there are a few places to eat. The most famous one is the Whoa Nelly Deli up at the mobile station along just up Tioga Pass Road. And years ago, this was written up as like an amazing gas station restaurant and won all kinds of awards for their fish tacos, their lobster tacos. You would never expect to find this kind of food in a gas station restaurant, but it's great. Then there's Mono Cone down along the highway for ice cream and burgers. A newer addition is the Latte Da Cafe next to the Mono Lake Committee headquarters. Then there's Lakeview Lodge is where I usually stay when I go there. I always stay when I go there. And then it's right next to the Mono Market. And the Basin Cafe is on the same grounds as the Lakeview Lodge. There's also plenty of camping around there and other places to stay, but this is just a little bit about the town so you know what you're getting into when you get up there. It's a very small town. You want to fill up with gas if you drive a gas car in Bishop, because when you get up to Lee Vining, you're going to pay probably $2 or $3 a gallon more than you would in Bishop, just because they're the only ones. All these places right now are closed for the winter. A lot of the business that comes to Lee Vining is because of the connection to Yosemite National Park. Highway 120 turns off of 395 there and goes up into Yosemite over Tioga Pass. So those are the places you want to check out in Lee Vining. We'll kind of start with winter. where we are just about to get out of tomorrow when it becomes spring, but winter at Mono Lake is probably not is it's beautiful, but it's not always a great time to visit because you're not going to be able to see many of the places. The roads are just going to be closed. The road down to South Tufa at this point was closed. This was in that heavy, heavy snow year of 2023 when we had over 200% of average snowfall. This was on April 2nd, I believe. Um, there was a lot of snow that year, and my friend and I drove down a little dirt road that was plowed part of the way, and we just stopped where, drove down as far as we could where it was plowed, and then just walked a ways to be able to get to this view of Mono Lake in the winter. So beautiful, but probably not the time to go to visit and see the lake. These are the Mono craters or Mono cones, some folks call them, that are just to the southeast of the lake, and these I think are really interesting. And there are some trails around there that you can hike up. I think you can go up to the top of the cones. I've never done that, but that's a cool feature that you might want to do in the spring or summer. This is a bird that's up there in the summer and the winter. Clark's nutcracker. They're a noisy bird, belong to the jay family, but they're endemic up there. As it gets into spring and summer, you're going to see some beautiful wildflowers. This was again in 2023 after the big snow. This field of balsam root came up, and I've never seen this up there before, but it was beautiful. So late um, late spring to us is beginning of spring up in the Sierras in the high country. So this was in late June to see wildflowers up there because of the snow. Spring or late, late spring, early summer, middle of June is when the runoff starts. And this is just an example. This is Lee Vining Creek, one of the tributaries to Mono Lake that is diverted. This was during a heavy, heavy snow year. Let me just do this. It was amazing. I've never seen it this high, but whoops, I didn't mean to do that. Let me get out of here and go to the next slide. Late spring is also not just the migratory birds that go to the lake, not water birds, but lots of different migratory birds come up and are nesting. And some of these may be year-round birds that nest in the spring. We've got a western wood pewee and this little tiny nest up here on the left. In the center is a green-tailed towhee. On the right, you've got a tree swallow checking out its nest in the tree. You've got a red-breasted sapsucker checking its nest out, another tree nester. And then on the left is a western tanager. That's just some of the birds that are there in the early summer, late spring. So the trail, one of the things you definitely want to see is the South Tufa. And this is just a beautiful spot. You turn off it's about 5 miles south of Lee Vining. There's a road that takes you down to the South Tufa visitor area. It's a Forest Service fee area. There used to be rangers at this little kiosk, and they used to lead nature walks, but I don't believe they're doing that in the summer anymore. I don't know that they have the funding, but you do need to have a pass or pay at the kiosk. It's in the parking lot. But there's a trail that is about just a 1 mile loop. It goes down to the lake shore, right along the shore. As you can see here, the trail is kind of underwater uh, in after that wet winter. But as you walk down the trail, it's real interesting to see a sign every few every few yards, there'll be a sign showing when the lake was up much closer to this, where this kiosk is. And as you walk down, it shows you the year and the lake level that happened that year. So this is a place you definitely want to go and walk down to the Tufa. On the other side of the lake, on the north side, there's a county park, at the Mono Lake County Park. It's trees and real pretty county park. And then there's a boardwalk that takes you down to a viewing deck near the shore. You walk along through some willows and habitat for lots of species of birds. And then you don't actually get to the shore on this little walk, but you get to a viewing area, a viewing deck. Another thing, you don't want to miss a sunset at Mono Lake. If you can, in the summer, it's warm, evenings are long, you can get down there and walk down to the shore and look at this, watch the sunset over the lake. It's beautiful. As you drive around the area away from the lake, if you do drive up, go by the Nelly Deli and then drive up Highway 120, you're on the Tioga Pass Road that goes up to Yosemite. If you turn off, instead of staying on 120 up the pass, turn off about 3.4 miles on Campground Road, and you can check out the campgrounds there. There's a number of nice campgrounds among the trees, aspens and big pine trees along Levining Creek. And then if you continue up the road to go back up to the road to Tioga Pass, and you'll get up into Yosemite High Country. So just before the park, you'll see Ellery and Tioga Lakes. These are both lakes that are man-made lakes, part of the Department of Water and Power's infrastructure for both electricity and water diversions downstream of this. They're really pretty lakes, though. And then if you have a pass, my slides kind of uneven here, but if you have a pass into the park in the summer, I would definitely drive up into Tuolumne Meadows, Tenaya Lake. This is Tenaya Lake, and in the summer, you're often going to have afternoon thunderstorms like this day. I believe this was early September, and you can almost always count on a thunderstorm and clouds. But Tenaya Lake is a beautiful spot. So that's another place to see that's within a half-hour drive of Lee Vining if you're up there. You go back down to Lee Vining and go north for another 5 miles or so, and there's a turnoff for Lundy Canyon and Lundy Lake. You might be lucky and see a beaver dam or a beaver. If that should say Lundy, not Lunny, along Lundy Creek. And there's another man-made lake before you continue up the road up the canyon along the creek. And there's some good hiking up in here that I have not done. It's farther up the creek, but it looks like it'd be beautiful with some waterfalls up there. It's also a really good place for fall color. As we move from summer to fall, this area of the Eastern Sierra has, great aspen trees and willows for fall color. And here you can see a beaver dam along the creek. The aspens turn color, and those campgrounds I was talking about earlier along the side of Tioga Pass have some great color with aspens lining the roads and lining the creek. And you won't get as many leaf peepers as you get in the fall around June Lake and Mammoth Lakes if you go up there and looking for fall color. I always keep going and head up towards Tioga and Lundy Lakes. So I'll stop there for a bit and see, did you have any other questions come in before we get into what's, the water diversions part?
Yes, many.
Okay. Many,
Um,
okay.
Yes. Let's see. Starting with about the diversions. About the the last lake in the June Lake Loop, which is Grant Lake, which is the reservoir
Right.
of the loop. I think that's the one that was built in the 40s. Do you want to talk about Rush Creek and the various creek, including, I mean, Grant Lake dammed Rush Creek and created this biggish reservoir up there. You want to talk about how many creeks have empty into Mono Lake and how many DWP
Yeah,
disrupt?
I've got, yeah, that's on this slide. Is there anything before we get into the creek diversions and the dams and the water
Sure.
issues? Is there any other travel questions or
Um,
anything? Because this is kind of my next to the last
okay.
slide.
Yeah, because lots going on about the public trust doctrine and the diversions.
Mhm.
Non-travel issue, but something we may want to discuss. New York Times article today, and in full disclosure, I'm a City of LA employee. I'm a criminal appellate lawyer for the city, specializing in domestic violence. But we're having a budget crisis, so I'm really wondering what's going to happen with DWP and all the mitigation efforts they've got set up around Mona Lake. I wonder if that's going to get cut. This is a very deep crisis we're facing, partly because of the fires and partly because of all the chaos in Washington. But anyway, that's going to impact the mitigation that DWP does. So something to think about. Visitor Center, excellent exhibits. Can you um, talk a little bit about if people are first timers to the lake, what
Mhm.
they can see? The visitor center has that wonderful ranger desk, a really excellent bookstore, although I think the Mona Lake Committee is even better. But and then excellent exhibits just for history and sociology of the peoples who have lived there. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I mean the visitor center. First, I would talk about the from the visitor center. There's a back deck that you can walk out to, and you can have a great view of the lake. There's a nice trail that goes down from the visitor center to the lake shore. It's a kind of a long, it's an easy walk down, but it's a much harder walk back up. So you don't want to take that one unless you're ready for a good uphill hike at 7,000 feet elevation.
Oh,
As far as what's in the visitor center for that sort of thing, if you know something more about that, I am not real familiar with the actual exhibits in there. Um, but yeah, I know it's just a really, really excellent facility that should be the first stop on the
I did
tour.
want to say, in terms of Native American life and history, I thought it was outstanding.
Mm.
Not only the sociology of how people have lived in the area for thousands of years, and then what happened after the gold rush in terms of people being forced by you know pioneers and gold miners and whatnot from the Western Sierra over the Sierra Crest down into the Eastern Sierra and conflict there. Different tribes trying to figure out how they're all going to live in the same space. Um, so that's all, documented there. I just think that it's a wonderful visitor center just to get a taste of that history and then to explore it further in the two bookstores. Other questions? Um, I think they're rebuilding a lot of the infrastructure up in Tuolumne that was destroyed in the heavy winters of 22 and 23. But in 23 especially, everybody was at the mobile station, the Woolnelly Deli. That is like the hub of that area because a lot of people a lot of the ranger housing had roofs caving in with a heavy snowfall 2 years ago. So Maggie and I noticed just scores, if not a couple of hundred, vehicles, visitors at that mobile station. That's the real community hub because the food's so good and it's got a lot of services there, although the gas is very expensive. So that was a surprise, but I think it's because so much had been destroyed up by the heavy winters in Tuolumne. The campground had been partially destroyed. The cafeteria and all that sort of thing caved in, closed in 23 and 22. So just a lot of destruction that I think they're kind of gradually building out of. And the other thing I wanted to mention for first timers, Bridgeport and Bodie State Park are relatively close, which are fascinating. And also, uh, Bodie, barges of gold and ore floated across Mono Lake to get to the Benton Railway. So that's just such a fascinating thing. Do you want to talk a little bit about Bridgeport, about things parts north, in addition to Lundy?
Oh, well, there's so much, there's so much you can see up this way.
Yeah.
You get up to Bridgeport, there's the Twin Lakes area, there's Bodie, of course, that's an amazing state park. Uh, excuse me, a ghost town. There's a beautiful hot springs up just outside of Bridgeport called Travertine Hot Springs. There's just so much on this road. I didn't want to make this go too long, and I could talk all night about the Eastern Sierra, but um, yeah, it's a wonderful place. Yeah, I don't have anything else prepared on the farther north. I wanted to stick with not making it too long here tonight.
Last question. Can you tell us about the autumn, the bird Chautauqua in September?
Well, it's actually in June.
June? Oh,
The
oh.
Chautauqua's in June. It's put on by it's out of the Mono Lake Community Center. The they they have all kinds of tours beginning on Friday. Let's see, yeah, beginning on Friday, June 20th. Yeah, it begins on Friday, June 20th, 21st, and 22nd, and there's tours each day and all different sort of birding areas. And the tours fill up really, really quickly. It's about $140, I think, to sign up, and you can take tours for all different sorts of birding adventures, from just sitting and watching for birds to hiking around to day trips up to the Bodie Hills or out into the snag forest. Um, it's a really fun thing, but yeah, it's in June for the when you have a lot of migrating and nesting birds in the area.
That's it for now. So
Okay.
I didn't want to interrupt too long.
Okay, so yeah, just a little bit about, as we've talked about the water diversions and what's happened there. So in 2023 and 2024, we had these heavy, heavy snow years, and there was a collaboration with Department of Water and Power and Mono Lake Committee. The DWP agreed that because the lake, this was an opportunity to start getting back up to the levels that were prescribed in the decision in 1994 requiring Mono Lake to be protected. They agreed to only take 4,500 acre feet in both years, even though it was a good water year. There was plenty of water for DWP without taking water out of Mono Lake. It's really a relatively small portion of the water for DWP comes from Mono Lake. But at some point, they got to 4,500 acre feet this year, and then they just didn't stop. They just basically stopped their collaboration. They abandoned their plan, their agreement. They ignored it, and they keep taking the water's continuing to flow out of the lake. Um, and they're currently, as of earlier today, when I looked at their little monitoring online thing, they're at 10,221 acre feet of water when they had agreed to 4,500. So this will continue till March 31st, which is the end of the water year. Then they take another measurement of the lake level, and depending on where it is on April 1st, they determine how much water they're allowed to take out of the lake based on their agreement to keep the lake at certain levels. So right now, as of March 1st anyway, the lake was at 6,383.3 feet above sea level. The mandated level is 6,392. So they've got 9 feet of elevation to go on the surface of the lake. And when you think about the feet, they're not measuring it in gallons or acre feet. They're measuring it in elevation of the lake level. So that is a big, wide, broad lake. What I say, 70 square miles of ground covered with water, as you raise that elevation up, you get, that's a lot more water. Uh, the diversions in 1941 caused the lake to drop by 50% of its volume. So Levining Creek, Rush Creek, Parker, and Walker Creeks are the ones that are diverted. Rush Creek is the one that was dammed up for Grant Lake. And when I was there in 2023, the the water was overflowing the dam. It was great. There was so much water, but that didn't last very long. So what's happening next is that the State Water Board is going to hold a hearing about Mono Lake and the implementation of the board's mandated healthy level of 6,392 foot of surface elevation level. They accelerated the plans for this after DWP, started to maximize their imports and didn't stick with their agreement. We don't know when this hearing is going to be, but there'll be a public announcement of a hearing. There will be there'll be time for comment, public comment and involvement. And the Mono Lake Committee is hard at work on figuring out how to present the case for saving Mono Lake versus DWP maximizing their water exports. So the things that we can do are, to become educated, read the Mono Lake Committee's information on their website, sign up for their alerts. They send out action alerts and the emails. I get them and read them. I've joined the Mono Lake Committee, which is basically, giving them a donation to support and stay on their information thing. And then as you do this, watch for news about the State Water Board hearings. If you're interested, keep your eye out for Sierra Club will likely have action alerts about it. And it's just important to keep an eye on what's happening so that when that hearing is announced, we can come in and counter whatever the DWP is going to say about how they need this water. There's other ways for water to be supplied to Southern California than draining this critical ecosystem. And there's other ways that should be other things that the DWP can take up besides draining Mono Lake. So they've already ruined Owens Lake further south. That lake has all kinds of infrastructure that DWP has put up there to try to suppress the dust. The lake isn't going to fill back up, but Mono Lake, after it was seen what happened to Owens Lake, a citizen group got together and was able to at least put a stop to draining Mono Lake to the point of destruction. So that's kind of what the best thing you can do is to support that Mono Lake Committee. Those are the people that are really making the change. And I'm going to stop sharing here and I will pull up their website and share that if anybody's interested in learning a little bit more. Or it's been an hour. So John, I'll leave it to you if we want to continue at all here.
Okay, so
Or if there's any more questions.
yeah, let's see if there are any more questions first.
Yeah, we do. Questions and comments that I think need to be incorporated into the debate with DWP. LA Department of Sanitation has started their toilet to tap recycling in a larger way. And so I'm wondering what the courts are going to say about that, because as you said, Marianne, there are other ways to get water other than draining the Owens Valley and the Mono Basin, which is, Mulholland's way from 130 years ago. So I think we need to be talking about why isn't Los Angeles recycling more of its water? And it's just really getting started. But this, as the former Department of Sanitation head, who's now the head of Metropolitan Water District, was saying the only growth area in the water business now in California is toilet to tap, is water recycling, and that needs to be much, much bigger. And we haven't even started with any kind of desalinization because of the expense, but given climate, that needs to be on the table rather rather than sucking these ecosystems dry, um, which is the way that we've, replumbing the state. So I really appreciate all the data you've given people about what's happened with um, DWP not abiding by its agreements and what level they're supposed to be at. I think that's critically important for people to understand. So
I've got I've got a graphic here that I think is pretty interesting, um, that I will share if that's all right with you, real quick here. I'm going to share this graphic if I can make it here. So this here's the lake level, and this is a really visual, I think. Here's the lake level when they started diversions, and the lake would, it would, here's the estimated level if they weren't diverting it. It would stay, it would go up, it go down, go up and down around this level. They started diversions in 1941, right about here. Here we are to 1950, 1960, 1982, I believe, was the lowest level. The whole nesting colony was imperiled by coyotes being able to get to them, to the islands. So in 1994, the State Water Board mandated that the lake be brought up to a healthy level. So it's gone up and down and up and down. Here we are, March 1st of 2025. We had a couple of really, here's a low level here, here's a low here. We were after, a long drought. We had a couple of good water years and got us up here, but we're still almost 9 feet short of this level here, which is still way below what the lake level should be if they had not started diversions. And even, yeah, so I'll stop that. But I think that's an interesting graphic.
oh, it's uh, I've grown up in that area, and one of the reasons I love the Sierra Club and love the outings is that my family camped and hiked and fished. In fact, fished Grant Lake all through my growing up. So it really makes me think a lot about coalition building, kind of like what we've done with Chuckwalla, what Moises and the community partners, the coalition partners and tribes have done with Coachella. There are all kinds of coalitions that we can build, especially, and I'm sure they've done, I think Mona Lake has done it, the committee's done it for the last 45 years, 50 years. But so many of us grow up hiking, backpacking, fishing in that area, and it's just so important to include all those members. I know that the commercial fishing or the recreational fishing industry there is fantastic. I mean, it is a fly fishing heaven. Rush Creek is itself is known. But I grew up in a boat with my dad, fishing Grant Lake every summer, and coming back with a mess of fresh trout, you know. So, and then hike and then going down to see the Mono craters and the South Tufa and understanding that when I was a kid in the 70s. And I remember when it was so low in the 80s too. I remember that distinctly. Um, so coalition building to help stabilize this and hold DWP to its word. I mean, and that's only done through the courts. The whole public trust doctrine that came out of this in the 70s was land break, just a landmark legal doctrine. Then, and I'm sure there are many, many people who know much better than I do. I know Joan was here on this um, gathering. I don't know if she still is, but just huge political work to do, especially as we move into climate and um, the chaos that's coming out of Washington. I think Joan has a hand up.
Yeah, a great, great program. Beautiful as well as educational, Marianne, and wonderful hearing about your experiences. Also, Julianne. But yeah, it was the courts, and Mono Lake Committee kept winning in the courts, but for 10, 15 years, the DWT just violate the court order. They'd bring them back into court. So they've been dragged kicking and screaming all along. And so you're right, we just have to keep after them.
And building that political coalition. I mean, I think about what you and others did here in the chapter for the San Jacinto wildlife area, that unlikely coalition of hunters and environmentalists and hikers creating this great bird sanctuary, which is now going to be, bordered by warehouses, but it's still going to be a hugely important bird sanctuary in our region. And it's this you know odd coalition, but workable. So I hope all of us realize that and working with our coalition partners on all these things. Anyway, Marianne, I can go on and on.
I know. Yeah, me
But
too.
it's just such a fascinating area, and boy, for all those present, if you haven't been up there, do go. It is just it's a wonderful. I think it's the most beautiful area in California, and kind of a hidden gem.
Yeah, and this is the website. I would encourage you if you find this interesting. It is an amazing place. There's all kinds of information here. One of the things that I didn't mention was that they have canoe tours. This is something I've never gotten to do. I think this would be really cool. Take a canoe tour out on Mono Lake with a guide that takes you around and shows you underwater 2-foot towers, migrating bird, all from a canoe. So I'm going to have to try that when I am able to. But anyway, I want to thank everybody for coming. And if there's any other questions, I'm here. But I got most of my answers from the Mono Lake Committee website. I mean, I've been there many times and know a lot about it, but they're really, really helpful with information. So thank you all.
Yeah, thank you, Mary.